Hi everyone! Alright, so let's start our class today. So we're going to learn about Naaman, who was a commander of the army. We'll learn a bit more about him later. But before we begin, do we all remember a man called Elisha? That's right, Elisha. And if you do, give me a hands up. Good, I see some of you with hands up. Well, if you remember, actually last week, teacher Sarah taught you the man called Elisha. And he was, who was it? Who was he? He was a prophet of God. That's right. So he was a very good worker of God who will always listen to whatever God wants him to do, he will do. And so in that time, in Elisha's time, there were two countries. One was called Israel and one was called Syria. So if you can repeat after me, Israel and Syria. That's right. Now these two countries, they don't like one another. So actually they would fight one another, which is not good. But they're enemies, right? So one day the Syrians came and invaded Israel. And they burned all the farmhouses. And they would even take some of the people in Israel and take them captive over to Syria to be their servants. And that is what has happened. And so we now meet this young girl. She was 12 years old and she was the servant of Naaman and his wife. Okay. Now this young girl, we're going to learn about Naaman later, but this young girl, she was a brave young girl. And so because she was a servant of Naaman's wife, she will do whatever Naaman's wife tells her to do. So if Naaman's wife goes, bring me some water, wash the clothes, cook me some food, and that's what she will do. She was a very good servant and she would do that. But now we meet the commander. And this commander, he was called Naaman. Now, can you see him properly? He's a little bit dark, but you will see him properly later. Naaman. So his face is like, what's happened to his skin? Yep. Okay, so Naaman now, he was a commander of the army. And being a commander of the army meant that a lot of soldiers would listen to you. So he was a very high position. He was probably very rich as well. And he would have been very liked. And so he should have been very happy, but he wasn't, right? He doesn't look very happy in this picture. And that's because he had a skin condition or he had a sickness called leprosy. That's right. Say, can you repeat after me? Leprosy. That's right. Leprosy, right? So leprosy, they had sores. It's like these red dots, right? Just imagine if they were on your face, on your hands, on your body, can you imagine that? Can you imagine? That's right. It's like leprosy. And they were itchy and they were painful. So that is why Naaman couldn't be happy, right? And the thing is, it's not just that he couldn't be happy, it was because no one could heal him. The doctors couldn't, there was no medicine that could save him. He had to live with this condition every day. Would you be happy if you had to have, red dots and you look like his skin? You'd be pretty unhappy too. Right? That's right. And so this is where the servant girl comes in and where she's done a very good thing. She goes and tells Naaman's wife. So this was Naaman's wife. So before, Naaman's wife. And so this young servant girl told Naaman's wife, oh, if only my master Naaman would go and see the prophet back in Israel, in my country. He would be able to heal him. He would be able to heal Naaman. And so she told Naaman's wife that. And so when Naaman's wife heard it, she was happy. She's like, what is this? There is hope. He can be healed, right? And so quickly, Naaman's wife heard it and quickly told Naaman what the servant girl told her. So quickly, Naaman went out and went to see the king. This is the king of Syria. And quickly told the king of Syria, this servant, I've heard this news from Israel, the servant girl of Israel. And she told me that there's a prophet that can heal my leprosy. Now, what do you think the king would do, right? Don't forget, Israel, Syria, they are enemies. They don't like each other. Do you think the king allowed him? Give me a thumbs up if yes. Give me a thumbs up if no. Well, actually, the answer is yes. Very interesting, right? This king of Syria, he was good to his people, good, and he really loved Naaman. So you could see that. And he said, well, you know, Israel is our enemy nation, but because he loved Naaman and he wanted him to get better, he said, I will write a letter and then I will give it to I'll send it to the king of Israel. And so at least the king of Israel introduce you to the king of Israel so he knows why you are coming, right? So yes, the king of Syria loved Naaman and allowed him that. Quickly, Naaman and with his chariots traveled all the way to Israel. And he passed the letter to the servants and he told the servants, go and give it to the king of Israel. Now, the king of Israel reads the letter. Do you think the king of Israel was happy? No, not at all. The king of Israel was mad and angry because in the letter, what it said, I am sending Naaman to you so that you can heal of his leprosy. Right? So the king of Israel is like, what? How can I make Naaman better? How can I heal someone, right? And he was so mad. He tore his robes. He was so angry. And he asked, who am I? Am I God that I can heal someone from leprosy? Which is that in those days, not many people could ever be healed from leprosy. So surely, he thought, surely the king of Syria wants to again have a war with me. The king of Syria wants to fight me. So he was very upset and he was very angry. What do we do? So now there was this man. This man was the servant of Elisha. And he heard what the king said and what had happened. Quickly went home and told Elisha. This is Elisha, so you can't really see him a bit dark, but this is the servant of Elisha, and quickly told him. And Elisha said, tell the king of Israel, send Naaman to my house, and I will show him that our God is true, is the real God, and can save him. So the king of Israel tells Naaman to go over to Elisha's house. So Naaman gets off the horse and goes and knocks on the door. Right? And who's this? This is the servant of Elisha. And he comes out and he tells him, the prophet has told you, go down to the river Jordan. It's called the Jordan River, and wash yourself 7 times. That's right, 7 times. Now, first of all, what do you think Naaman's reaction was when he heard that? Was he happy or was he angry? So he was actually very mad. Look at him. He's like, very angry. He said, he was saying, I am not going down to that muddy and dirty old river. I want Elisha to come out and call on the name of his God and heal me. So he expected Elisha to wave his wand, do something amazing, and he'll be cured or healed. But he didn't. He was very angry. So he turned away and stomped off. But his servants, Naaman's servants, right? The servants said to Elisha, and he said, what Elisha has asked you to do is very simple. All you have to do is just go and, wash yourself in the river 7 times and you do it. Why don't you try it? So Naaman thought about it. Naaman was angry because Naaman thought he's the commander. Everyone listens to him and he expects his prophet to do some amazing miracle. But he didn't. But he thought, you know what? Maybe I should just do what the prophet told me to do. Would you listen to the prophet? Well, it wasn't a hard thing for him to do, and it took a lot, but well done. And he went on and he quickly rode down to the river. And he looked at himself, and you can see there's these sores, right? So just kind of pretend, that he has these sores on him, right? So it's like these sores, these are the leprosy, right? Imagine if you had that. That's what he had, okay? So let's just pretend to be Naaman. I'm pretending to be Naaman here. And so when Naaman went down to the river, he went down and did what Elisha did, okay? He went into the water 7 times. So can you see the splash? Can you see that? That's right. He did it once. He did it twice. He did it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. And on the 6th time, he came up and he still had leprosy on his skin, right? But on the 6th time, he decided to go down, right? Like, all right? And then on the 7th time, he got up and he was completely clean. His skin was completely clean. No more leprosy. What a miracle. That is a miracle. And there were no more sores. It's all gone. It's very, very clean. It's a baby skin type. Well, then he was very happy. And he went and he rode back to Elisha and to see Elisha. And he said to Elisha, he said, now I know that the Lord is truly the one true God. And from now on, I will only worship this one true God. And so Elisha told Naaman to go in peace. So that's the story of Naaman today. And there's a lot that we can learn from this class, this lesson. There are 2 things that we can learn. The first one, the servant girl. We learned how brave she was, how she went and told Naaman what God could do, what the prophet could do. Imagine if she didn't say anything. Naaman, for the rest of his life, would always have leprosy on him and would not be cured. So we can learn from this young girl, this young servant girl, to be brave, to tell our friends, to tell people about God, about God's love. And that is what you call preaching. The second thing we can learn is Naaman. Remember, Naaman first didn't want to listen to what the prophet told him. And it didn't make sense, I mean, he has a shower every day. The leprosy didn't come off. It didn't make sense that if you wash yourself in a dirty, muddy river, you would be healed. But he obeyed and he listened. And that is one thing we can learn. It seemed silly, but we now know it is very wise, it's very smart to obey God. Even though we don't understand everything, we know that God always knows what is the best for us. Our job is to obey God and please Him. So that's the story for today. And then I'll ask you some questions to see if you are listening. See you there. Bye.